Good afternoon and welcome to Kenan Kel with Adam and Aaron. I'm often referred to as Adam.
And the people call me Aaron.
This week we have an interview with a very special guest. We first encountered him as the actor that portrays Marc Cram of Kenan Kel. He's since worked as a producer, director, editor, showrunner, and filmmaker. He is now best known as one of the founders and owners of Joke Productions, the LA-based TV and film production company. Under that banner, he has directed the award-winning documentary Dying to Do Letterman and is the executive producer of the true crime documentary series Unraveled on Discovery+. Ladies, gentlemen, Fantas, and friends, we're happy to be joined today by Biagio Messina.
Hey, how are you? Messina, but that's
Messina.
Okay.
My God.
My dad will kill me if I let you pronounce it wrong. That's okay. It just goes to show I'm not well known enough for anybody to pronounce my name correctly, which keeps me humble, which is good.
We're in the same tribe of that, so we get Lima far too often.
Biagio, it's so great to have you on. We're so glad that our contact went through, and we're here now, and we're ready to talk about the oft forgot, but maybe not forgot, maybe the oft recalled and captured on interview, Marc Cram. Like we are so, it's so exciting. Like I heard your voice and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like
He's here.
I was kind of losing it a little bit. Yeah.
Thanks for reaching out, guys. Thanks so much. It was so nice to hear from you. I was really, really surprised to get your message. And it's been a long time, but thanks so much for reaching out. This is great.
Let's just get started. We know that you've now run Joke Productions with your wife.
Whose name is Joke, by the way.
Whose name is Joke, yes, exactly. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name.
Vinciune. It rhymes with balloon.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Joke Vinciune. And could you maybe just start by letting us know some of the recent things that you've been working on?
Totally. Well, it's funny because we, Joke Productions, we started out doing comedies. Our first big show that we were showrunners on was Beauty and the Geek, which was very apt. Clearly, I handled the geek aspect of the show. And then we, after that, we launched our own little company, Joke Productions, named after my wife. And our logo is actually her baby picture, which I found in a shoebox years ago. Actually, probably during Kenan and Kel, I found it in a shoebox and I was like, one day this is going to be our company logo. And she's like, you're stupid. And now it's our logo. We just, we met at UCLA and I fell in love with her right away. It took her a long time, but I didn't give up. And now it's, more than 20 years later. We've been married more than 20 years now. And we've always sort of been in love and been work partners at the same time. And we started making stuff a long time ago. And Joke Productions is kind of like the culmination of this, this journey together. Oddly enough, we got into true crime almost by accident. We had an idea for a crime show, and that turned now into many crime shows. So most recently, we've been working with CNN, HLN, Oxygen, Investigation Discovery, and our newest show comes out on August 9th, Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's a new show called Devil in Suburbia. And despite the somewhat salacious name, it's actually a very straight documentary series that takes a look at we use home video to take a closer look at people who seem really normal and then slowly reveal how someone like that can end up being, a monster. Really, really, really proud of that show and had a lot of people involved with a lot of the crimes, a lot of the family members, a lot of the survivors who wanted to tell these stories, which is always important to us because you don't want to just do true crime. If nobody actually wants to tell the story, then you're just opening old wounds for no reason. So
that's really impressive, really wonderful. I actually just watched Unraveled, the Long Island serial killer.
Oh yeah.
Fascinating. You guys did an excellent job with that.
Oh, thank you. That was a crazy story, right?
Absolutely,
They may have created a fake serial killer to hide their own misdeeds. I mean, nobody knows for sure, but a lot of investigations have been launched since that show aired, and that was really proud of that one.
Yeah. What I noticed really was kind of the courage and being able to produce something like that. Cause that's, you're turning over rocks that people don't want to be turned over, it seems like. And it's, so the courage, but also this kind of focus on what I've seen at least is people, right? You guys seem to be a very people-centered production company. So kudos to you guys for continuing with all that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, true crime is a weird genre to work in. I was actually much more scared when we were doing the Golden State Killer show. It was called Unmasking a Killer. They caught him 9 days after we finished airing, but the whole time we were making it, I was convinced he was just gonna show up in our living room. Yeah, that was.
Whoa!
Yeah, that was wild. But I mean, listen. At the end of the day, I think we look for stories that people want to tell. And in that particular case with Unmasking a Killer, there were so many people that wanted him caught. I mean, we had just dozens of interviews with people who were survivors, whose family members. By the way, this couldn't be more different from the vibe of Kenan and Kel. So I won't drag us down too many dark alleyways. But needless to say, we've kind of gone from comedy to true crime, and we always try to be a story, story first, people stories first kind of company. And regardless of the genre. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. So yes, we definitely want to hear more about Marc Cram. But before we do, now listen, I did my research on Google, so I don't know what's true. So stop me if this isn't true, but it seems like your love for filmmaking goes way back. I see that you produced an award-winning play in high school, Me and Grandma.
Well, I guess we'll start with the love of filmmaking and writing.
Yeah,
I think,
great.
Like a lot of kids in high school, grade school, life isn't always so easy. So I think for me, writing was a way to sort of reframe and find a way to enjoy all the things that really sucked about being a teenager. And, that particular time in my life, my parents had divorced and me and my dad had moved in with my grandma, who was an old school Sicilian woman from Sicily and thought everybody was the devil. I was a 15-year-old kid who just wanted to talk to girls on the phone, which was a big no-no. And so there was a lot of strife and a lot of intense discussions, around that time of my life. And so I had turned a lot of that into different kinds of writings and funny stories. And there was a playwriting competition that my English teacher had encouraged me to enter. Run by the local theater called Dobama Theater, which was a small theater in Cleveland, but well regarded. They had for the local theater scene, they were well thought of. And I was one of the winners, and they picked the play they had written about my grandma and they put it up and they produced it, and it was just really great to see it come together like that. And I'd always done a little bit of acting. I was in theater too, and I remember seeing the play put up at the theater and thinking to myself, the kid that got playing me is not even Italian. Like I should be an actor. I should do that. And so, definitely the acting part, it was all sort of like a writing, directing, acting, producing. I wanted to be a part of storytelling in whatever that meant. And I loved hearing real stories from real people. That was most of my writing was based on stuff that had really happened. And I think long term that ultimately led me to documentary, unscripted reality, because at the end of the day, I was more interested in the real stories and the real people than I was in taking their stories and fictionalizing them. Because I'm like, why would I do that? The real story is better. So I think that was the seeds of a lot of the filmmaking that eventually led to where I am now. But acting was definitely a part of that.
Real stories from real people.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I know for me, especially as somebody who's creative and doesn't always know how to express that creativity, right? The podcast is one way, but it's nice to hear how people kind of ended up being able to tell stories and express themselves. So thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, and clearly, listen, you're out there doing it. Let me look props to you. I know that people think, oh, you just set up a podcast and throw it up or whatever. It's not like, you mentioned that you're a creative person and you're doing the most important thing any creative person can do. You're showing up. You're actually doing it instead of just talking about it. So props to you guys.
That's true. Thank you so much.
It's something you don't realize in the day-to-day, but then you look over, it's like, oh, if we release an episode every week this year, that means there's 52 hours of us making content.
Speaking, yeah.
That is no small feat, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're especially on that front now that we're past the show. It's proper, and it's interview content. It's writing our own episodes and all kinds of fun creative exercises.
Well, good for you. You're doing better than 95% of people who aspire to do a creative job because you're actually doing it. So congrats.
All right. Adam, pat ourselves on the back. All right, let's learn more about Marc Cram, please, Adam. You want to go ahead?
We've talked about that high school era, and shortly after, in 1998, you were cast as Marc Cram.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us how that went? You nailed the job of a lifetime, right?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, yeah, I had done a little acting in Cleveland. I had gotten in the unions in Cleveland, but it's not like there's a huge acting scene in Cleveland, right? I mean, I was like, I played like the teenage driver in a slow moving farm vehicles video for the state of Ohio. I mean, like these were the gigs I was Tweety Bird at the mall. I was the talking Christmas tree at Christmas time. I mean, that was, so I come out to LA, and I had gone to UCLA, which is where I met my wife, and managed to get an agent. And Kenan Kel was my first TV audition ever. So I was like, and I just remember getting the thing, and it was like nerd. My agent called. She's like, okay, you have this audition. And my agent, I don't even think she was necessarily sure she was going to keep me, because like I had been with them for like 3 weeks, and she's like, I don't know what we're going to send you out for. You're weird. And I'm like, well, weird is good, right? So anyways, they get this thing for nerd. So I go in, and I am ready. I'm like, first of all, I felt like a nerd through most of grade school and high school anyway, but they had mentioned that this guy was a spelling champion. Now, let me tell you the craziest story. 7th grade, probably one of the nerdier things I did. When I was in 7th grade, the 8th graders had to learn the longest word in the dictionary, pneumano-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, okay? And they had to spell it. The whole test was that word. Well, me being like, hey, I'm thinking ahead. I'm like, I'm going to learn that word now. And then in 8th grade, I'll be set. I'll be good to go. 8th grade came. They didn't do it. So I knew the word for nothing, right? I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I ever did until my audition for Kenan Kel.
Yes.
So I walk in there, and I am just like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna nail this. I got this.
No way.
I walk in with those glasses you saw in the show. Those were my glasses from high school. Those were my real glasses. I walk in with those glasses. I got this crazy plaid jacket I got from the Salvation Army. I'm just like, I'm going for this, right? So I go in there, and the audition went good. Like I could tell the audition was like going okay. It was for the 2 casting directors. Krisha Bullock was one of them, and Amy, and her last name escapes me at the moment, but they were great casting directors. And I got to the end of my audition, and they're like, can you come back and do it like that tonight? And I'm like, yes, I can. I go, but also I got kind of like a special skill. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, do you want to see it? And they're like, okay. And I'm like, well, since he's a spelling champion, I thought you'd like to know that the longest word in the dictionary is pneumano-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. PNEUMONOULTRAMICROSCOPSICILICOVLCANOCONAOSIS. It means lung disease. And they just busted up laughing. And they're like, okay, you have to do that tonight too, right? So I'm like, okay, this is great. I nailed it. So I'm thinking I'm going to come back that night, and it's going to be like me and whoever else is like over them, right? So I come back that night, and there's like 50 other guys that look just like me. They all got big glasses. They all got plaid jackets. I'm like, oh man, this is like whatever. Like I don't have a chance. So anyways, it gets to get my turn, right? And they come out to get me, and she's like, listen, I don't want you to be surprised. When you walk in, you might recognize the director. If you don't, no problem, but I just want you to be surprised. So like I was like, okay. So I walk in the room, and it's all the writers, and it's Kim Fields is the director. Yes. Now, if you know Kim Fields, I don't know if you guys are really young for this, but there's a show that used to be on called Facts of Life, right? And she played Tootie on Facts of Life. Well, I grew up watching Facts of Life.
You saw her get in trouble.
I am freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Tootie from Facts of Life. So I'm like, this is like such a huge moment for me, because she's one of the few celebrities I've actually bumped into in LA, and it's in this audition. And I'd seen her growing up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really can't blow this. And so I did the whole audition again. And I did the stupid thing at the end where I spelled the word and said it means lung disease. And Heath, one of the writers, he just looks at me and he goes, I can't even spell lung disease. And so I laughed, and I said, hey, thanks so much. And I left. And then we're walking out, and there were still so many people sitting out there in the waiting room. And, and I was like, I felt really good. I'm like, look, it was my first audition. I made it to callbacks. Like, I just telling myself, just be happy with that. And I remember going home and my then girlfriend, now wife, joke. We were living together just out of UCLA, and she had got up and gone to work in the morning. She had a job on the Paramount lot. I still didn't have a job at this point, other than Pizza Hut. I was still delivering pizzas at Pizza Hut, and the phone rang, and it was my agent. She's like, "You got it." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I got it." She's like, "You got it." And it was, at that point, it was just one episode. And it was like, I think it was co-star credit. And it was like, it was all this. And I was just so excited. And I remember going to the first day, for the reading. And I drove into the lot with the Pizza Hut sign on top of my car. I never took it off. I left it on the whole time. Because I'm like, I don't want anybody to think like I'm too big for my britches. And then whenever I left Kenan Kel, I'd go to Pizza Hut at night. And it was unbelievable. It was so great. Like Kenan Kel were so nice that, I didn't know what to expect. I was a nobody. I had no acting resume, other than the slow moving farm vehicles video, stuff like that. Tweety Bird at the mall. But yeah, that was how it happened. And that audition was just, I'll never forget that stupid 7th grade spelling word. And it came back all those years later, probably in the biggest moment of my professional life at that moment, that one word, which is way too many letters to say lung disease. But anyway,
that word's comedy potential. I saw, it was 100% that word. It was like a Steve Harvey bit recently.
Was it?
It was somewhere on my timeline.
You stole it from me.
Some little kid was like that, and he was blown away. So no, you stumbled on something great, and that was an awesome tool that I'm glad won you this role.
Yeah, it worked out all right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So awesome. You now have your first role on Kenan Kel, because I know, it's a job and you're acting and we know a little bit about how the show was produced, but what are some memorable moments or maybe some behind the scenes moments you think, for a Kenan Kel loving audience? I mean, this is the hub. This is the place for all Kenan Kel lovers to be. Give us something good, Mr. Messina, pretty please.
I got a few good things for you. I think so. So first of all, I don't know if you know this or not, but Nickelodeon on Sunset, which is no longer there, which is where the show was filmed, was originally called the Earl Carroll Theater, and then at one point it was called the Moulin Rouge, famously, supposedly haunted. And I mean, like, spooky, like, really cool place, but like hallways that went to nowhere. And then and all the crew members, they were constantly playing jokes on each other, but there were people who really believed it was haunted. Like stories about people hearing weird stuff at night and where was it coming from? And to the point where, if I remember correctly, because they did a couple of crew and cast and crew videos. And I believe Kenan Kel did a whole Halloween video about how the place was haunted just for the cast and crew going up in the rafters and screwing around. But it was a spooky place after hours. It was like this old school, I think it was built in the 1930s, 1938 or something. So it was like one of these old school theaters with the pillars and the weird carvings that were so popular from back then, So it was a really, really spooky theater. So that was one thing I always remembered about the place. I will say, behind the scenes, I don't know what it's like at other shows. I mean, I did a few episodes of All That as well, and it was pretty much the same people. The only other big show I ever did was ER, which was a hospital show that was on way back in the day, which was a very different vibe from Kenan Kel. So I will tell you, at Kenan Kel and at All That by extension, the people behind the scenes were so cool. They were it seemed like the cast and crew could just intermingle with no problems whatsoever. And I think a lot of that came down to just how nice Kenan and Kel were. Teal Marchand, who played the mom, Ken Forey, who played the dad, Dan Frischman, everybody they were so cool. And it's at the time, I mean, as far as Nickelodeon shows go, it wasn't a much bigger show. When the live studio audience would show up, I mean, you would think it was like Beatlemania. I don't know if you guys are old enough to know what Beatlemania is, but
yeah,
sure.
There's 4 of them, right?
Yeah. Girls screaming, people going crazy, never went to their heads. Kenan and Kel were the nicest, most down-to-earth guys. And I remember getting there and being like so nervous because I was a nobody, and I just was like, should I keep my distance? Should I talk to them? And they were always really nice and coming up to me and talking to me, and they could tell I was nervous and they were loosening me up. And so one of my first weeks there, I said, hey, I got a Marc Cram joke for you. And they were like, what is it? I said, why do fish swim in salt water? And Kel was like, why? And I said, because pepper makes them sneeze. And it's the stupidest joke, but the way Kenan and Kel laughed at that joke, I felt like I was the greatest stand-up comic in the world. I mean, and then they just told that joke for like the next 2 weeks. You know, it was so funny. But they were so cool like that. I think another thing that was really neat is they would have like softball games. So it was like the cast and the crew would go out and play, and we'd play these softball games. It was just like a picnic, and the crew would bring their families, and Kenan was there and Kel was there. Again, it was like there was no egos, which sounds so crazy when you hear some of these stories. And again, even from sets that I've been on, like in years since, it's just not like that. But it was just such a family atmosphere. Another thing that I found out the hard way, because I didn't film every week, right? Obviously, I wasn't on all the shows. I was on a bunch of them. Well, the crew apparently like to have Pizza Hut for lunch. Now, you might have remember I mentioned earlier that I drove for Pizza Hut. Mm-hmm. So as a matter of fact, I used to go from the live studio audience taping. I'd go from feeling like, oh my God, I'm really living my dream. I would go straight to Pizza Hut, right from Nickelodeon on Sunset. Pizza Hut was like 3 blocks down the street. So, which makes this next story even funnier. So I'm working at Pizza Hut, you know, it's like a Wednesday, you know, like lunch rush. I'm driving and I cannot find this address. And I'm driving up and down. Remember, this was before cell phones. Oh, yeah. I got a map. I got like a paper map, you know. I can't find this. And then I realized, now I'm like 20 minutes late, and I realized, no way. The address is for Nickelodeon on Sunset. And I'm like, I'm so embarrassed because I know that the crew is on their lunch hour. I know I'm 20 minutes late, and I don't even know if people know that I work for Pizza Hut, but nobody's going to think. So I show up. I come in, the guard's like, they've been waiting for you. By the way, the guard doesn't recognize me because I'm not wearing my big crazy glasses. Knocking on the back door, on the back of the stage. The door kicks open, you know, and it's one of the crew guys who's got this really mad look on his face. And he looks at me and he goes, Biagio? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, dude. I'm like, and he's like, say no more. Say no more. He's like, guys, look who's delivering the pizza. And I'm like, oh man. And they came out and they tipped me like $20, which they didn't have to do. And they were they had every right to be mad. I really screwed up their lunch, but I think they were so tickled. I had done like 6 episodes at that point, you know? And I think for them to see me realize I was still, you know, when I wasn't there, I was still a working guy. Mm-hmm. So that was a really funny sort of behind the scenes story. They had a basketball hoop right there in the parking lot. And so again, cast and crew, we'd play ball all the time. And Nick Cannon, so you guys probably know who Nick Cannon is.
Oh, yes. Of course.
Believe it or not, he was the warm-up guy for the audience. So he used to come out. This was before
way.
Yeah, it was before he was on all that, and before he had done any roles. Because he showed up by Kenan and Kel later. Oh, yeah. Him and Kenan actually wrote an episode together. You guys probably, I assume you
of course.
Who loves Ooh?
Yeah, so he used to come out and he would do stand-up comedy for the audience before the show would begin. So he was like their warm-up guy, which was another just crazy, you know, and to see where his career has gone. I mean, it was just really, really neat. And I remember him getting discovered by Will Smith's company while he was the warm-up guy, and just to see him come up and then doing stuff on all that and where he went, it was so awesome. Also, Nick Cannon, nicest guy in the world. Again, you wouldn't know. You know, you see these big Hollywood stars, super nice guy. Just always treated me, you know, so kind. So there's a few behind the scenes stories. I hope those are interesting for your audience.
That's excellent. I mean, what reminds me a lot of is that, you know, we're talking all that. We're talking Kenan Kel, that era, coming like hot off a Good Burger.
Yeah,
it's literally, you see them in that kind of fast food environment, and there you are living it as you're performing on the show.
100%. And, you know, they had shot the first 2 seasons in Florida. Correct. Seasons 3 and 4 they shot in Los Angeles. Had they still been in Florida, I certainly would have never been on the show. So they just happened to have just moved. And I think my episode which aired. I think I wrote you guys about it. The night it was supposed to air, my first episode, someone at Nickelodeon, I guess, played the wrong episode because my whole family, all my friends in Ohio are watching. They had told me it was going to be on that night. And then it wasn't on that night. And everybody, and then like, some of my friends just thought I was making the whole thing up. And I'm like, no, I'm really on the show. I swear it's going to be on.
There's no texting. There was no like,
No, there was no, there was just phone calls, semi-angry to very confused. People being like, what, you weren't on. What was this supposed to be? But yeah, so I was really lucky that they had moved to LA. And that first episode I was in was the second episode they had taped in the new space.
Oh, so you were fresh there. And you said the director at the time for that episode, what was it, Steve Holland?
Writer, Steve Holland. Well, yeah, Steve Holland, who went on to be showrunner on Big Bang Theory. And I mean, he was just, again, super nice guy, super funny, created the character of Marc Cram, and the whole palindrome, it's like the same spelled forwards and backwards. So it's like a little bit of a spelling joke. I think that the character was based on someone he knew in high school. I don't know for sure. I don't remember exactly, but I remember that he had created the character, and it was, and it was just really cool to meet him and meet the writer who wrote the character. And I'm like, am I doing it right? Like, is this what you had in mind? And he was, he was really supportive and stuff. But it was only, as far as I knew, it was only going to be one episode. And I remember leaving that first episode, and the security guard, she says to me, she goes, I asked them if I need to get you a regular parking spot, and they told me maybe. And I was like, really? And then the next one they had me back for was a really small part on the Chicago witch trials one. With Becky the Witch, right? And it was just me running in all out of breath, but they had kind of let me know that they added that to bring me back a little sooner. And I think my next one after that was the birthday party. They were really nice about, like bringing me in and letting me have fun and feeling like I belonged, which was really great. Of course, working at Pizza Hut kept me very humble. So it was always straddling those two worlds.
Now, you mentioned Chicago witch trials. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. So we have an ongoing theory about Chris's mother.
Chris Potter, the manager.
Chris Potter. Right. So we want to know, is there any working theory? Did you hear anything about Chris's mother that he's always talking about, or is that more just not?
I have to be honest. Keep in mind, we're talking what, 98?
A long time ago. Oh yeah.
20.
I don't remember anything about Chris's mother. Sorry, guys.
Oh my gosh,
that's totally fair.
If you ever find out, you'll have to let me know. But yeah, as the gray hair came in, I think some of the memories have gone out. But
that's okay. I didn't mean to test you or anything like that. She's a witch, though. That's our theory. It's pretty. We got a lot of pieces of evidence leading up to it.
That's where that comes into play. Like you said, it's been a long time. People that touched Kenan and Kel went on to do other things, and the fact that Steve Holland, who did some work on Big Bang Theory, like you were a proto nerd. You were like a proto member of that.
Yeah, right.
I kind of was. Yeah, I wish you would have called me for Big Bang Theory. I was way out of acting by then, though. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you were on to better horizons.
Well, definitely different horizons, and I will say the one thing about acting versus filmmaking, and that was one thing I was always trying to hang out with the crew, and actors are just supposed to go sit in their green room and not bother anybody, but I was always asking about the cameras and, trying to talk to anybody who would talk to me. I think, ultimately for me personally, acting, there's a lot of waiting, right? You wait for your moment, you come on, it's great. And then there's a lot more waiting, whereas, when you're on the crew or you're making something every second of every day, you're making creative decisions. I think ultimately that was more attractive to me. I also was well aware just how hard it was to make it in the acting industry, even being on a show, So I was like, I think long term, I think filmmaking is going to be where I really put my eggs.
Great transition.
Absolutely. Yeah. We wanted to learn a little bit about how did your goals and ambitions kind of shift? We hear a lot about, some stories of successful actors and stories about people who transitioned over time. And some people leave the filmmaking industry altogether, but you stayed. So can you talk to us a little bit about what the transition was like for you, and then how Joke Productions really came about?
Well, I was lucky in that it was almost like the reverse of a transition, because even though acting was a part of it, like when I met my wife at UCLA, and the third day of school, I met her the third day of school, and she said to me, "I'm convinced the only way to make it in this business is to produce your own projects." And I was in love with her from that moment on. I was like, "You are awesome." And I was convinced we were going to get married and start a company. And this is like the first day I met her. Hey, it worked out. But so it was. We had always seen ourselves as sort of producers and filmmakers. And even though she won't admit it, she did a little acting back in the day as well. And, it was a part of it. It was always a part of it. So when I got the role on Kenan and Kel, one, I was very surprised because I knew what a long shot it was to get any acting role. But two, I had always seen it as a launch point, hopefully to something more. A lot of the money that I made at both Pizza Hut and Kenan and Kel went to buying our very first editing system, which again, this was before, you couldn't just edit on a laptop. I remember we bought this is really going to date me. It was the old like bluish green Power Mac, like tower. It was a G3. They didn't even have Final Cut Pro yet. It was like the old version of Premiere 4.1. And we bought like our first DV camera, and so the whole time we were shooting stuff and making stuff. We never stopped. And then I actually was doing actors demo reels, which in case anyone doesn't know what that is, when you're an actor, you have to have a sample of your work. Right. So back then, again, it was really hard to get tape on yourself. If you were on a show or if you wanted to shoot a scene, they would come to us. So we would shoot scenes and edit them, or I would edit their demo reels together. And it was cool because it taught me how to edit, because I was editing together, footage from comedies and footage from dramas and people who wanted to be hosts. And some of it we would shoot, and some of it would be like someone that had one line on a TV show and I would make it look like they had 4 lines by the time I re-edited it. And, it was all that kind of like constantly working with footage and actors from day one. And so that was a really big part of our career, was that we were always making stuff. So even though Kenan and Kel was happening and I got to do a little bit of all that, and like I said, I did one episode of ER, which was a very small part, but I had lines and it was a thing. It was still like I knew in the back of my head that acting was a long shot. And I had met really successful actors who hadn't worked in a really long time. I had met, actors who had gotten lucky once and never worked again. So I heard a lot of stories from a lot of different people. And I was like, all right, well, if acting is going to be a part of my life, I want it to come from the point of view of like, I'm going to be making my own projects, because I can always act in something that I write. I can always go and make something because that's up to me. But me being cast in something else, I have no control over that. And no actor does, So I think that was where it always came from. And then just as sort of like reality TV was taking off and we were working a little bit more in unscripted and documentary, I just, for me, that became really exciting. Because at the time, and this was new then, it's not now, but at the time you could buy like a DV camera, which was new, and you could shoot broadcast quality. And I had learned how to use After Effects long before anybody knew what After Effects was. So I could make graphics that could air, and we could make a whole TV pilot, just the two of us. And so that's what we did. We started shooting TV pilots in our living room.
That's awesome.
It was fun. We shot a little pilot called Cooking with Beer, and we sent it to the Food Network. And they wrote back and they were like, hey, we really like it. We're not going to do it, but you did a good job. And so we just started making stuff, and we saw an opportunity, I think, for us, which was like, wow, we're making stuff that got the Food Network to write back to us. They're like, hey, this is really good. So we're like, why don't we keep doing this? Like, maybe this is our thing, telling fun stories about real people. And between the DV camera and sort of learning how to make graphics and edit and sound mix, we just started making tapes that were really professional. And that was sort of our leverage to get into production companies. And then we became producer directors and then showrunners, and eventually launched our company. But it all started from that little 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood where we had, one camera, eventually 2 cameras, and just started making stuff. So it wasn't so much a transition out of acting as it was like we knew we wanted to make stuff. I got to do a little bit of acting, and I kind of went back to our roots.
it's amazing because it always goes back to the one thing, and it's will you actually put in the work to make something?
Yes.
And I love that you chose yourself, right? Because so much of Hollywood is you're waiting for other people, and LA and the whole industry is you're waiting for people to pick you, and you picked yourself. And that's really inspiring from my perspective. I'm sure some of our listeners are getting inspired as well. To be able to have this project, have a partner in making it, right? In Joke, and then kind of like making it happen, right? Somehow find a way. Now, I do want to know, starting a passion project with your significant other, a passion project and a career, really. Like, I know this sounded like it was your dream from day one.
Yeah, both your careers.
Yeah, that has to be hard at times. Could you talk a little bit about what it's like working with your wife, owning a company with your wife, and how do you guys resolve creative differences?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course it happens. I mean, I think we were lucky in that, like I said, I knew I was in love with her immediately. It took her a while to figure it out. But while she was figuring it out, we learned how to work together. I think that was key because we didn't really start dating for almost a year after we met, but we were working together the whole time. And so there were definitely creative differences and, at times when we'd be at each other's throats in that first year. But I think what was great is that we learned how to work together during that time. We had a year to figure that out before we were ever really dating. So I think that helped immensely. I will say there were plenty of times where she will say to me, or I will say to her, I don't need a business partner right now. I just need a wife. I just need my wife for a second. And I'll talk to her, and it might be work related, but she knows and I know that I'm talking from a place of emotion that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what's actually going on or something that's reasonable. It's how I'm feeling. And she'll say the same thing to me. I just need to talk to my husband for a minute. And that's when it's like, okay, we just put aside all the work stuff and we're a couple in that moment, and it's like, okay, now we can deal with the emotional side of that work stuff sort of separate. And I think that's a real important thing. I can't tell you how many people out here in LA are like, how do you do it? I could never work with my, this is crazy. You guys are weird. We are, and we know it. Even when we got married, like people were like, you guys are so young to be getting married. How, and especially in LA where this this is during Sex and the City years where where everybody was waiting to get married and playing the field. But we just sort of, we had a shared vision. We both knew that we wanted a spouse and a partner. Her parents had always worked together. They were actually Belgian beer importers, which was great in college. Let me tell you. Yeah. I mean, the first time I met her parents, her dad had beer on tap in his kitchen.
Oh, that's sweet.
Thus the pilot, Cooking with Beer. That's where the idea came from.
Great. You probably had a lot of free beer, right?
Oh yeah. It was all free. Whereas my parents were the exact opposite. My dad's mom was from Sicily and my mom's mom was from Italy. And traditionally, Italians and Sicilians don't get along. I think they were doomed from the start. So I kind of saw exactly what not to do from my parents. And, with Joke's parents, it was like the model of how it should work. So I think like between all of those weird, influences and knowing what we wanted to do, like we got lucky, and I know that I'm lucky and I'm so grateful. And no matter whatever happens at work or in the business or in showbiz, which is so crazy, like a long time ago, I got to the point where I just don't care because I'm with the woman I love. And like, we could live under a bridge if we had to, and we'd be happy. Like, I love her. She loves me. We love our kids, and everything else is gravy. And I'm really grateful and I'm happy. Like, don't get me wrong. I enjoy making TV more than when I worked at Pizza Hut. I mean, I did like working at Pizza Hut. It was nice people. It paid my bills. This is great in a different way. And I probably would rather be doing this, but at the end of the day, once you realize that, family, the love of your life, when you really prioritize that above everything else, the other stuff doesn't matter as much. And so those creative differences we might have, we just work through them. And I give in to her sometimes, she gives in to me sometimes. Sometimes we just both let it go and say, let's just move on. And there's still a couple of projects I want to make that she'll never do and I'll never give up on. So
what a testament, right? What a testament. And the fact that you've run a production company through some very difficult economic years, some very difficult cultural changes, and you guys are still going and going strong. Like, you're producing really fantastic work.
Well, thank you so much.
I know you're a humble guy, your Pizza Hut roots, but there's definitely more than luck there. You guys really have found a way to work together in an outstanding and inspiring way.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I know you guys are independent and you stress your independence. I heard a couple interviews of you and Joke talking, and it sounds like you had the opportunity to get bigger at times, but you never wanted to lose that autonomy and that sovereignty of your own creative ideas. Could you talk a little bit about that and why or how it's hard to stay independent, why staying independent is so important to you guys?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it is it's a difficult choice, right? And right now I feel like we're still, despite my gray hair, we're still young enough and love what we're doing enough that we don't want to feel like we're just punching a clock. And sometimes, not all the time, because I don't want to paint a broad brush for this, because a lot of people sell their companies to bigger companies and they make a gazillion shows and make a ton of money. And some of the shows are great. But it's like anything else in life, right? If you take money from somebody, at the end of the day, that somebody has final say. I prefer for that somebody to be the TV networks that hire us to make the shows for them. And ultimately, we do our best to deliver our creative ideas to them. And if they want something different, we do our best to have conversations so that we can all end up happy. And so far, that's really worked for us. When you put somebody else between you, it can get hard. I want to use the cameras I want to use. I want to edit on the software I want to edit on. I want to pay people fair rates. At the end of the day, I want to feel like if I need to put some more money on the screen, we can do it because it's our choice. And, listen, nothing against bigger companies, but a lot of times when you're with a place that's making a gazillion shows, it can be hard to make those arguments, so, or maybe you want to make a really weird show. There's a project called Dying to Do Letterman, which I've almost mentioned a few times. And that's like the perfect example of something that you could never, no one is ever going to make. And so I think the value in being independent, at least at this point in our career, is we're still really able to make the shows we want to make in a way we want to make them and make it really clear to people what our brand is. And I think that if down the line, if we're lucky enough that we find the right investor, we find the right partner that really wants to blow up our company, but is, in line with what our values are, which honestly is we want to make the best show. And if that means that we need to go a tiny bit over budget and it comes out of our pockets, we want to be able to do that. But listen, 20 years from now, maybe I'll be a total sellout. I don't know. But for the moment, it's hard. Now, listen, the downside is, it's all on us. If me and Joe screw up, our kids don't go to college. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's on us. We don't have somebody big bankrolling us. And, you have to have a high tolerance for risk. And I think, in order to do that, you have to be in a place where, like I said, the most important thing to you is knowing that I've got a wife and I've got a family. And if someday this doesn't work out, we're going to be happy no matter what we do. And when you can put yourself in that place, it doesn't feel like so much of a risk anymore. It feels more like an adventure, and I'm not under no illusions. Someday no one's going to want me to make TV for them anymore. And it's going to be me and Joke in rocking chairs, maybe in some log cabin somewhere in the woods. I don't know. But wherever we'll be, that part's not going to change. So I try to put my faith in that.
Great goal.
Let me tell you, as a young person who's still trying to figure out his career, it's nice to hear that coming from a professional creative.
Let's talk creatives and how us young people trying to create stuff and what kind of advice you have to pass along. We've all found ourselves in this situation of having an idea for a book, a screenplay, documentary, something that comes along, but we don't. we don't think we have what it takes to make it. Any like secret to success that you think helps people stand out?
Yes. Well, first of all, everybody thinks that they're not good enough. Everybody. And I feel very comfortable saying this because he has said it publicly, and we were lucky enough to work with him. James Gunn, who is director of Guardians of the Galaxy, and, big time director. He was the host of our show, Scream Queens, that we did for VH1 years ago. And he was very, very upfront that, and even at that point, and he had done a few big movies. It was before Guardians, but, he'd written a book, he'd done movies, that you always feel like, you're not good enough. You always have those doubts. They never go away. And if they ever do, you're probably doing something wrong. I believe that. I think those doubts are fuel. I think those doubts are your inner voice telling you, hey, you know what? Don't give up. Don't just sit back and coast on this. Like, you got to work your butt off every second. Look, sometimes you're going to fail. We all do. It happens. I mean, if Steven Spielberg can fail, any of us can, right? I mean, it's like sometimes you make something that doesn't work. Okay, you move on to the next thing. My main piece of advice for that when you're feeling those doubts is the best way to get rid of them is just focus on the work. There's so much work to do if you want to be successful, right? There's so much to do. You could be busy all day, every day, trying to do what you want to do. Well, if you're busy doing that, you don't have time to worry. So, the busier you get, the easier it is not to worry. But don't think that worry is a weakness. I think that feeling those doubts is a strength.
All right. Stay hungry, stay busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, catalyze it, right? Use it as a catalyst
100%
to kind of propel yourself forward.
This is not one of them, but I can't tell you how many of my creative projects are spites inspired. Seeing someone do something and be like, that's not bad. That's not hard. I can pull this off.
That's funny.
Yeah. We should definitely start talking about dying to do Letterman.
Whatever perspective you want to talk about it. I mean, I know that it was crowdfunded, which is just remarkable. I mean, to gain that much support for an idea, but you guys really did pull it off, and it won all kinds of awards, and would love to hear about Dying to Do Letterman.
Well, I would love to tell you about it. And I'll even give it a Kenan Kel spin, because indirectly this came out of Kenan Kel. Because...
Oh, wow.
So Steve Maison is a stand-up comedian who I met because while I was on Kenan Kel, I started editing actors' demo reels. And actors talk to other actors who talk to other comics. And then Steve wandered in one day and wanted me to do his comedy demo reel. And this was when we were still living in our 1-bedroom apartment. I had done, I wasn't even done with Kenan Kel yet. I mean, it was very early on. And we were not, we had not done any TV shows yet or anything like that. And I did his demo reel, and no big deal. Anyways, it was a few years later, and we got this email, and he had started a campaign called Dying to Do Letterman. And we're like, well, what's this? It turned out that he had learned he might only have 5 years to live. He was diagnosed with incurable liver cancer. And he decided to dedicate his life to living his dream, which was performing on the David Letterman show. A dream, by the way, he'd already been chasing, not something he wanted to do just because he thought he was dying.
Sure.
And so we were like, oh my gosh. And so I'll never forget, we called him. And we're like, listen, I don't know about Letterman, but we know somebody who can maybe get you on Leno. He was like, and he was very polite. He's like, well, David Letterman is my dream. And, because we had gone to college with somebody who worked with Warren Littlefield, who was the former president of NBC. Okay, yeah. And so we were like, well, so we called to offer that. And we're like, well, is there anything we can do? He's like, look, this is my dream. He's like, but I'll tell you, he's like, I would love to make a documentary about it. Would you guys ever want to do that? And we're like, are you kidding? Like, we're in. And by that point, we owned 2 DV cameras. So we gave him one of them, and we said, just start shooting everything. And we had just gotten our first agent for the filmmaking side of things, for pitching like unscripted at this point. And so let me tell you, we told our agent, okay, we got an idea for this project. This guy, he might die of cancer, but he's going to chase his dream to get on the Letterman show. They're like, you can't sell that. It's like, what happens if he dies? Is he any good? How you can't promise he's going to get on Letterman. Nobody's going to fund this. And he was right. They got us a few pitches, but nobody was going to touch it. Everybody was like, oh, that's such a great project. Good luck. And so it was a real interesting time in our life, because we started to have success in unscripted TV. We had done our first producing directing job and then our first show running gig. And, you know, this was all going on sort of at the same time. So we were able to start calling in favors, and like I would go and film with Steve. He would film himself. Other people would film, and we just kept going. And this was years in the making. You know, and so I didn't know what was going to happen. And Steve had just made one promise to him, which to this day I'll never forget. Is when we started the project, he's like, all I'm asking is this: if I die, you have to finish the documentary and you have to make it funny. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what? Can you put any more pressure on me? You know, but what am I going to say to the guy with cancer? No. I'm like, Steve, whatever, I swear to you, I promise you, we'll get it done one way or the other. And so we kept shooting it and we kept funding it ourselves. And again, this was long before we were really making money. Anyways, we hadn't talked for a while. We would shoot on and off, but like 3, 4, 5 years go by, you know, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, you know, and he's getting his checkups. His cancer is doing well, but like this 5-year time limit goes by and we're all scared. And anyways, one day I had 2 missed calls from him. And I looked at joking around. I'm like, hey, maybe he got on Letterman. And Joke's like, and I called him and he's like, I got on Letterman. I'm like, you're kidding me. And so, you know, but he didn't know if he was going to be on or not, like, cause you could still get bumped.
Oh yeah.
And so we had shot hundreds of hours of footage at this point. So now it's just like full gear. We're running around with cameras every night. He's practicing his new set that he's going to do. We don't know if he's going to be on or not, you know, and it's like, it's just this whole thing. And we managed along the way, then we managed to get like Ray Romano to sit down with us and like Kevin Nealon and Brian Riggins, all these guys that had been on the show. Ray Romano was like, I got to be on like 9 years later. Yeah, I mean, like it was these guys, it took them forever to get on. So it was really like this crazy story. And I don't want to give away the ending, but it's a happy ending if anybody wants to watch it. But so we had the end of our movie. We actually finished the movie. I edited it. I had some great help from some awesome assistant editors, but ultimately I finished the edit and we didn't get into Sundance and we're like heartbroken. And then we get a call like from the CineQuest Film Festival, which honestly I didn't know a whole lot about, but it was the director of the festival calls. He's like, I love your movie. He's like, please come do your premiere with us. And we were, at the time, we were still waiting to see if we were going to get in South by Southwest, which we didn't. And we were like on the fence. We're like, I don't know. But so we went to CineQuest and we won the Grand Jury Prize and the Audience Award, which was insane and very rare for a documentary to win both. And then we won the Cleveland Film Festival, which was, you know, pretty prestigious. We won Clint Eastwood's Film Festival at Carmel. Like we started racking up the wins. That was when the crowdfunding campaign actually came about, because even though we had finished the movie, we got invited by the International Documentary Association to DocuWeeks, which the purpose is to qualify for Academy Award consideration. Right. Which is insane. Yeah. No, and so deal. We were
really big,
you know, and we didn't get nominated. We didn't get the Oscar, but like just to get invited to qualify by the International Doc was such a huge thing. But we had to make this special print called a DCP, which is a digital cinema print. We had to do this whole crazy mix, but then we also had to be able to have money to travel the team to New York, to LA, and it was just, it adds up real quick. And when we did the numbers, we're like, this is going to cost like $38,000. So that was when we decided to do the crowdfunding campaign. I don't want to make it seem like we were just able to do a crowdfunding campaign and raise all the money. Right. I think the fact that we'd been invited to qualify helped a lot, you know, and then we did this campaign, and then like IndieWire picked it up and started writing about the campaign. And, I remember what I had done was I had watched the top 20 crowdfunding Kickstarter campaigns of all time. I watched every single one of them. I transcribed them. I broke down how they worked, and I structured our thing the way that I thought they were all working.
That's a Marc Cram move.
You went full nerd mode.
Full nerd mode. And it was a full-time job. I mean, every day we were posting videos, we were posting stuff. And we just, we ended up raising over $50,000. And that money went, for DocuWeeks and for travel and, we ended up paying a little bit for a publicist then at that point. Yeah. And we ended up getting distributed by Oscilloscope. We had a nice little run in a few theaters. I mean, it's a dream come true for a documentarian,
Yeah.
Right. but it's the perfect example of a project everybody told us don't bother with, because
right.
nobody wanted to do a movie about cancer because it sounded depressing, even though I say the movie is very funny when all is said and done, because I promised him it would be. Nobody wanted to do a movie where you didn't know what the ending was, because was he going to get on? Was he going to die? If he died, oh, there's a real uplifting movie. How are you going to make that happy?
Right.
And also, like, it wasn't very far into filming that he got a letter from the Letterman show saying, this will never happen. We're not going to put you on just because you're sick. And by the way, that's the first act turning point of our movie. And I never forget filming with him as he reads the letter for the first time. And I'm like trying not to cry because I'm like, they're like crushing his dreams here. And he just puts the letter down and he just goes, you know what? I'm going to get on for all those people they say no to. I tear up just thinking about it now. Like in that moment, just seeing him and half being like so touched and half thinking that he's out of his mind and it was never going to happen, you know, but, you know, it really makes you sort of go, wow, you know, we need to think about what our dreams are while we can still chase them, how important those dreams are and what they mean to us, what they mean to the people around us. And I think he also brought up a lot of interesting questions. Like, is it ever selfish to chase your dream? If you're dying, do you spend every moment chasing your dream? What about your loved ones? Are you neglecting them? It was a lot of interesting things that sort of came up and just made you think about dreams in general. And I think that has stuck with us a lot. But Steve I'm happy to say he's still alive. He's the very rare exception. The doctors are shocked. A lot of the people that were diagnosed with him at the same time have passed away. He had a lot of friends pass away who he met in support groups, and a lot of cancer patients who came to our movie and loved it. We did a lot of charity screenings and different cancer screenings. A lot of them have passed away. And the greatest thing about that movie was we had a cancer patient come up to us after she saw the movie, and she said, "Thank you for just treating us like real people in this movie." She's like, I'm so sick and tired of everybody just pitying us. And you didn't do that. And we didn't, because at the 10-minute mark, Steve does a bit called the top 10 benefits of catching cancer, which I was like, whoa, this is like really hardcore and edgy, but he's got cancer. So if anyone can make that joke, it's him. And uniformly, cancer patients loved it. And uniformly, the people who hated it were people who didn't have or didn't know anyone with cancer. Yeah, and it was like, I don't want to turn this into the Dying to Do Letterman podcast. I hope I didn't talk too long about it. No. But that's, that was a big part of, I think, just shaping our career and dreams and committing to a dream when nobody says you should do it. I think you should do it. Because even if the movie had ended differently, if he had passed away, we would have finished the movie. I would have made it funny, and I would have known at the end of the day I kept the promise to my friend, and that was still enough to me.
Yeah. All those big hits out there, those great success stories, there's usually someone along the way that said, don't do this. Don't stand out. Yeah. Don't follow through, and this is a bad idea.
I also wouldn't qualify us as a big hit. I would say we were more mildly successful than wildly successful, but, we played in theaters. We got distributed by Oscilloscope. For me, that was a win. We were new and noteworthy in iTunes. I was like, I'm good. Yeah. I'm happy with whatever happened.
That thread about chasing your dreams, the fact that you guys got to make something like that with somebody who was not given much time to live and he's still alive. I didn't know that. That is amazing. And it makes you think, like, man, how much does chasing a dream really give you life back?
Yeah.
Right? Or having a dream in the first place, right? And not giving up on it. So
he's convinced that was a big part of what kept him alive. And there's actually a funny scene in the movie where he's talking to his wife and he's telling a story to her. He's like, yeah, I remember talking to my friend and saying, I got to get on Letterman, before I die. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, well, I guess I'm going to die now. And his wife is just like, shakes her head. And she's just like, because it's not funny for her, No. And it's like, but you got to hand it to him. I mean, how do you deal? He used humor to deal with his cancer. And he really believes chasing the dream and always finding a way to joke about it was a big part of him staying healthy.
Man, if this isn't creative inspiration for me, at least, this is really, really amazing, Biagio. Adam, I think we should probably do a review episode or a series of episodes on Dying to Do Letterman. We did a 3-parter on Good Burger, which has been hard to top. Yeah, so.
Aaron, do you want to take us to this last question that we have here?
Biagio, you have a successful production company. You make some really cool stuff. Like, let's say that I have an idea for a reality TV show. Maybe I think it'll kind of fit in what Joke Productions is going to do. Maybe I think it's not going to fit. If I just have an idea, what should I do with that? If I want to make that idea into a reality?
I can actually speak to this. So the first thing, and this really sucks. People hate to hear this. Okay. All right. This is.
I'm ready.
But
I'm ready.
but the good news is there's an answer. Ideas are not worth anything. Okay. Especially in unscripted. All right. Everybody's got an idea. 100 people tried to pitch Survivor set in the business world. Mark Burnett sold it with Donald Trump. This was 20 years ago before all this political stuff was involved. But as an example, he sold that show because even though everybody had the idea, he had the package. So we call that a package, right? Let me give you an example of what is a package and what isn't a package. Because if you want to work in unscripted, you want to work in reality, this is the key. Not just with us, with every production company out there, they'll pay attention to you if you come at them with a package and not an idea. This isn't a Joke Productions thing. This is every production company in town. And we all get pitched ideas which are worthless. And the very few people who come in with a package usually at least get a call back, if not a meeting. Here's an idea. I want to do a show about cage fighting. And maybe we'll follow kids who want to be cage fighters. That's an idea. Okay. That's nothing. Now let me show you how it was actually pitched to us by the two guys who got it right. Hey, we grew up in this small town of Minden, Louisiana, and where we live, cage fighting has taken over football as a sport everyone comes out for. A couple of our guys have made it all the way to the MMA. We have permission to shoot with all of them. We got the league owner on board, and we made this tape to show you what everybody looks like. Well, that's not an idea, my friends. That's a package.
Yes.
They walked in with that tape. We gave them a bunch of notes. I ended up re-editing the tape. We sold it to MTV, and we all made it together. Okay, that's a package. That's the way you pitch a show. All right, give you another example, and then I'll explain why it's important. One of the biggest things that gets pitched all the time to every production company is like a songwriting competition show. And this has been pitched for the last 15 years. Okay, first of all, nobody wants to see anybody singing around writing songs, okay? And I personally have passed on a whole bunch of songwriting competition shows over the years that have come through our doors, okay? Now, all of a sudden, Songland gets made. So everybody's like, what the heck? You said nobody would ever make a songwriting competition show. Well, okay, that show got made because Adam Levine left The Voice, and then, they owed him a favor. And so he said, I want to make the songwriting show, and I have Ryan Tedder, and I'll get all these songwriters to come on, and it'll be great. Yeah. That's a package. Okay. How do you do a songwriting show? You make it about all the celebrities that are going to come on, not about the process of writing the song, which is why if you're just starting out and unscripted, don't come up with big, crazy ideas like Survivor or Lego Masters, or you can't pitch Lego Masters unless you have Lego on board.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I always tell people, you're not going to out of the gate, you're not going to sell a show like Survivor or Big Brother or any of these ones that have been on forever or any of these big Netflix shows or, a Gordon Ramsay show. You're not going to sell Hell's Kitchen without Gordon Ramsay, So what do you do then? Okay, start with having something that's real, a real person, a real place, or a real thing you have access to. Start there. It's got to be something that's really interesting and TV worthy. It's got to be at least as good, if not better than anything that's already on TV. And so I would say 99, almost 100% of what production companies get pitched are ripoffs of Survivor, or what if we do a competition reality show set in this world or this world? It's the best insert occupation here, Right. Let's do a podcasting competition show. Let's do a basket weaving competition show. Let's do a show about kids trying to get into college. I mean, it's like you can insert anything and you're never going to sell, especially as somebody new, right? But let's say you have access to something really unique in your town or somebody who's a real interesting personality, or, hey, you've got the chutzpah to go out and reach out to a celebrity and get them on board with your idea. That's a package too, right? I always tell people there's something we call a MOP, M-O-P. It stands for most often pitched. It's a very old term in unscripted TV, even in scripted TV. It's it's the idea is everybody pitches. A MOP for people who have no idea what it takes to do production is let's do a reality show set at the White House. Like, okay, do you have the president on board? Have you talked to Secret Service? People will pitch that one. And the answer is always the same. Oh, I'm sure if we get a TV network on board, they'll do it. No, they won't.
Yeah, right. No, that's not how it works.
And I think today people are more savvy. Like I haven't heard that one in a while, but we call them mops because they get pitched all the time. The way to make a mop is to attach a celebrity, but then you got to get to the celebrity. Sure. So like maybe you have an idea that's a quote unquote mop, but you find out that there's a celebrity who's really, really interested in that world. And so you put together a great piece of tape and an awesome pitch and you roll the dice and you find a way to get that the celebrity, which you can find a way these days. You can always find a way.
Sure.
So the truth is, look, it's hard. What I always tell people is start with what you know and what you have access to. The other way in, okay, which takes arguably longer, but it takes a really long time to sell a show if you've never made one either, is, move to LA or New York and get a job and work really hard, start as a PA and work your way up to showrunner. I know people who've done it. And then when you get to the point where you're a producer and you've worked at enough production companies, some of them will let you pitch to them. And then you go in and you have an honest conversation with them. And sometimes they'll help you attach the talent. I don't know if that's a very helpful answer, but I do think the biggest problem people have when they come to the world of unscripted is they think their idea is worth everything.
No way.
And it's not. And even legally, it's not. I mean, any lawyer will tell you, you can't copyright an idea. You can't copyright, hey, it's a show about a bunch of people living on a desert island. You can't, but you can package up, you can protect yourself by attaching yourself to like a really good group of people or an interesting cast. Another one that we sold to Oxygen before they were a crime network and it didn't get made because they turned into a crime network was somebody had pitched us a show about these three sisters who were witches. Speaking of Chicago witchcraft.
There you go.
And their mother was training them in the art of witchcraft. Again, is what for them it was like a religion, but it was also spells. They did the whole thing. Sure. Well, they walked in with the three sisters, with the mom, with tape. Very different than going to a production company and saying, "What if we did a show about witches and we look at their lives and we see them do stuff?"
Right.
But 99% of the time, that's the pitch a production company will hear. It's a whole different story when you walk in with a package. So if you're interested in that world, you can do some research on the web, but mainly start with a package, not an idea. I don't know who watches Kenan Kel, if anybody cares about that.
Oh, we've got plenty of creatives in the audience, and it's great. We've gone full circle here. It's really about that real people and real stories is what the focus is.
The weirdest advice I ever got, but I'll boil it down because I think if this is for creatives too, I talked to this old crusty dude in Cleveland before I moved out here, and he was like one of these guys that would get hired from LA to come in and tell you what it was really like. I don't even know if he ever did anything. This was before the internet. I don't even know who he was, but I'll never forget him standing in front of me, and he's being like, "You want to be an actor, kid? Here's what you do: move to LA, keep auditioning, don't die." Okay, weird, but actually sort of actionable advice. And I've boiled that down. To me, these days, what I tell people creatives is this, and it's not nearly as colorful or as exciting, but there's really only two things: show up and don't get distracted. And what I mean by show up is forget about sitting around thinking about doing the work. You got to do the work. You can think about writing screenplays all you want. If you don't sit down and write it, it's never going to get done. And it's easier than ever to get distracted. And honestly, like where I think most creatives get distracted these days, it's very hard to draw a line between doing the work and building an audience for that work. And the truth of the matter is, I think if you look at the most successful people in our business, most of them were never concerned with building an audience. They were concerned with doing good work. Because let's be honest, building an audience takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And if you split your time between building an audience before you're ready to, you can, this doesn't go for podcasts, by the way, or there's certain creative endeavors where you have to build your audience.
No, it's a different beast, but we get it. Yeah.
But I think filmmakers are a great example because you can make films that are just okay and work really hard to share them on YouTube or wherever and try really hard to build an audience. And I've known a lot of those people and a lot of them have done some really good work, but I can't think of any of the ones that I followed over the course of 10, 15 years that I thought, wow, these guys are really good, that ended up having real success. Whereas I think about a lot of people who seem to have come from out of nowhere, but they just spend all their time on the work. And it's hard, right? Because especially if you get into social media, you get into the web, it's like, oh, we got to build an audience. You got to draw people in. But at the end of the day, for the people that are going to make your career, most, the actual Hollywood executives who are going to buy your screenplay or buy a TV show from you, they're not looking at social media. They're not looking at your YouTube, You managed to get there somehow, and you got somebody's attention.
But when you're there, what matters you brought with you more than anything
else.
Yeah,
and especially, and it's even harder today, right? When we started, you couldn't just make a TV show in your living room. I mean, we did, but we were like among the first. Now anybody can. So I don't know. I that's what I say, show up, don't get distracted. If you manage to do that, that's my version of move to LA, keep auditioning and don't
die. Yeah, no. And that's so true, right? Because to not get distracted, you need to be disciplined, right? You need to create a space where you can do your work and then you got to be there every day and doing it. That's huge advice. I don't think you know how. That's big advice. That's that idea of the package. That's the real nitty gritty practical stuff that even helps me in my creative projects. I was brainstorming and writing them down. I got my notebook right here.
Nice.
And so
you described it well. With the Kickstarter projects, where it's like you go to the the Kickstarter pages that don't go anywhere, that have a couple family donations, and you can tell that there's not a package there. There's an idea. There's just a little piece, a hint. But when you do your homework, you go through, you deliver. This is the job. This is the project. Do your homework and you come out swinging, and that's a good way to make something happen.
100%. Bet on yourself. If you're not willing to bet on yourself, why should anybody else? And that's a good pitch to walk in the room with. Mm-hmm. When you get to the point where you're in that meeting and they're like, "Why should I take a chance on you?" Say, "Because I took a chance on myself first." And a lot of people won't do that. You gamble on yourself. That actually means something in these meetings.
Wow.
Real awesome stuff.
I feel like nerd. This is why nerds have the potential to rule the world, right? because they do their homework, they show up, they're on time, and they don't get distracted.
100%.
That's how you learn the longest word in the dictionary. You stay on top of it.
And you never know where it can lead. But you got to bet on yourself first. Listen, that's beautiful, Biagio. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to talk about on Kenan Kel with Adam and Aaron. Before we,
I just want to say thank you so much, for reaching out. I played the nerdy weird dude on a really popular show. Arguably a slightly annoying character. Really nice to have you guys reach out to me and, in a nice way and have me on. It means a lot to hear that people actually still watch the show after all these years, and that, the character of Marc Cram lives on. So mainly I just want to say thank you guys so much. I'm really, really touched that you reached out. At the end of the day, I'm still more the kid that was delivering pizzas than the kid that got to be in front of a live studio audience. And I wear that as a badge of honor. So it's nice to actually get interviewed about my time on that show, because I don't believe I ever have. So thanks for being the ones to break that ice.
It's been our pleasure.
Absolutely. And seasons 1 and 2 of Kenan Kel are currently on Netflix.
We are running a large campaign of our own to get your seasons up there.
Please get them on. Listen, the last royalty check I got for Kenan Kel, I think, was 26 cents. So I'm kind of wondering if it'll be bigger from Netflix. Sometimes my wife is like, "Why do they send you these? It's going to cost them more to print the paper than it is to send it to you." Maybe Netflix royalties will pay enough for a McDonald's trip. We'll see. So
here's hoping.
Biagio, it's been such a pleasure. We wish you the best of luck. We're gonna keep watching your stuff, and who knows, maybe we'll have another conversation one day after your royalties turn into $2,600.
Whoa, let's not get crazy. I'll settle for $2.60. So, well, so you guys reach out anytime. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and good luck with the podcast. Good luck with your own creative endeavors. Let me just say, major props to you for having the gumption to do your own podcast, to make your creative projects come to life. You are the creatives of tomorrow. I have no doubt you guys are going to be successful. And, maybe someday, I'll start a podcast to have you on it, so I can talk about how you became such big stars after I told you, "Don't die." So
Looking forward to it.
All right, you guys take care.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody, from Adam, Biagio, and Aaron, here it goes.
Thank you for listening. You can send us an email at KenanKelPodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm/KenanKelPodcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all at Kenan Kel Podcast.